Welcome to the Art of Procurement podcast with your host, Philip Eidson. Here, thought leaders share the trends, strategies, and tactics that you can use to elevate the role of procurement and your career.
Hi there, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Art of Procurement podcast, which is powered by SIG. And today I'm joined on the show by Charlotte de Brabandt. Charlotte, as you'll hear in the show, was recently honoured by ISM as part of their 30 Under 30 Awards programme for 2018. Charlotte was the Megawatt winner, and as you'll hear, it's really for great reason. In her day job, Charlotte leads Energy Procurement for Johnson & Johnson, but that only tells half of the story. Charlotte's also a prolific public speaker, a TEDx organizer, charity worker, frequent traveler, and she's passionate about the intersection of procurement, technology, and the future of jobs. And so in our conversation, we talk about the project that led to Charlotte's 30 Under 30 award, but also ask some advice for how I can improve my own public speaking. And Charlotte shares some of her habits that really allow her to fit everything in. So there's some good time management tips at the end of the episode. So as we go into the conversation, I started by asking Charlotte if she found procurement or did procurement find her?
I think it's really a matter of both. I let it all unfold and I kind of just followed my heart. I had my college education at a international boarding school in the French part of Switzerland with 55 nationalities. And afterwards, it took me to the UK, where I completed my undergraduate and graduate degree in business, and then partly also in engineering. And that was around 2008 when we also had the financial crisis in London. So I had to kind of rethink, what do I want to do? Where will my journey head? Do I want to leave London? And I started just applying to different industries, which caught my interest. And the best one was actually when I received the opportunity to join the automotive industry and start an international management procurement program at one of the leading automotive companies at that time. And they had a procurement academy and, they really pushed me to that field.
Yeah, the automotive industry is such a great grounding spot for when you're relatively young in the profession, because you learn so much about structure and process. And I think that from experience, you kind of have a lot more responsibilities in an automotive environment than you may have in other industries. I just wonder if that's something that you found as well when you started in automotive.
Absolutely. And I truly think that automotive gave me the basic structure to understand what supply chain, what procurement is really all about. And to understand it from the project procurement side, strategic procurement side, direct procurement, indirect procurement. Yep. And I got to be involved in all these different fields, not only in EMEA, but also in APAC, when I was part of a special team sat in Beijing for nearly 2 years. Right. And I truly engaged in all of these different procurement processes from a different intercultural perspective. And that's really just enriched all of that experience.
Yeah, we actually talked a little bit before we recorded about your experience in Beijing, and I'd love if you could just share a little bit about that and kind of the motivation for you in jumping into an environment like that.
Well, for me, ever since I was a student and in my boarding school, we from a young age onwards, I always enjoyed the thrill of adventures and going through a path of the unknown. So I wanted to take up that challenge. And just like I did at boarding school when I was also a mountaineer guide in the Swiss Alps, and back then with the age of 12 to 18 already leading a group up the Mont Blanc or through other different mountains, I saw that as another mountain I could climb. And during my time in Beijing, I didn't only focus on my project, but also I ran the very first whole marathon while being there. So I really took that opportunity to get the most out of me, to stay focused, engaged, but at the same time get the most out of that experience.
So I love your spirit of adventure that you talked about, and how you kind of approach challenges. Do you feel the same in terms of your career and a career in supply chain, and kind of do you look at that as an adventure and an ongoing journey?
Well, absolutely. I think supply chain or procurement in particular is still a very untouched territory of future development. And everyone currently is talking about blockchain or digital technologies, artificial intelligence, machine learning, that cognitive thinking, humanoid robots, or autonomous intelligent systems. And there is really a great future in the field of supply management, how we will interact with new technologies and innovations ahead of us. You know, the whole approach of autonomous supply chain or cognitive supply chain. I think that will truly be the future, what it will develop to. But I strongly believe at the moment IoT, Internet of Things, will change the future of supply chain drastically in the short run. I read a statistic recently which said that Gartner predicted that by 2020, more than 50% of major business processes will actually incorporate some form of IoT. So if we take that into practice, I think IoT will or could disrupt supply chain in 5 different ways. Firstly, looking at asset tracking, allowing professionals to monitor temperature controls, or secondly, fleet management, enabling data tracking, or even inventory management, warehouse management. That's where the Bluetooth technologies, motion sensors come in. Fourthly, vendor management, and lastly, predictive maintenance. I think these are the five main points, how it will truly become an adventure.
And just for context, I wonder if you could share a little bit about your current role, because I think that kind of how you see IoT and the opportunities it presents is really relevant in terms of the role that you're working in right now.
Yes, absolutely. So when I joined Johnson & Johnson, I was offered the chance to learn something new and be creative. And for the first time in my life, engage in a virtual, global, complex team.
Right.
And that enabled me to then create impact not only on a national level, but truly globally. And having just moved industry from automotive, where I was at for 9 years previously, to now consumer goods, pharmaceuticals, and medical devices, I was able to combine that automotive experience and just receive the best possible outcome for the first project, which I got to engage with at Johnson & Johnson. So my first project at Johnson & Johnson, that really was the start of a magical beginning of a global career. Let me start again.
Yeah, no problem.
So my first project at Johnson & Johnson was really the start of a magical global career. I was given a project to lead the MEP, a market engagement program, which is truly an innovative and disruptive tendering process, especially for the field, to find a global energy service provider. So the aim was to only find one global supplier to fulfill the global need from Johnson & Johnson for 920 sites.
Wow.
And this process has really never been done before to such an extent. Therefore, the team and I sat in Switzerland, and I had a global team based in Belgium and the US. We immediately brainstormed and had a think of which potential suppliers to approach.
Right.
And our strategy was to really find or engage as many suppliers as we could in the most enthusiastic way we could think of. So at the beginning of the project, I hosted a global WebEx where we invited 77 suppliers to come together, listen and hear all about the scope and get an introduction, hear about our Johnson & Johnson credo, which says that treat others as you want to be treated, and we shouldn't only look at our local communities, but really focus at the global community which we live in, and try and get this enthusiasm of as many suppliers as possible and their willingness to participate in this complex tender. So a normal MEP process would usually take 6 to 9 months, or even up to 12 months. But I completed this specific project in less than 4 months. Furthermore, I even negotiated 1 year for free in a 3-year contract compared to before. So I was really leading this initiative on a global level working out of Switzerland in 3 different time zones
Right.
and aligning with the stakeholders from Asia to the US on more or less on a daily basis. And the stakeholders were so impressed by the results that my work that I received this internal recognition award as well, which is called an ENCO award, which we have at Johnson & Johnson. And just lastly, this is the project which I then also had the honor to win the prize, 30 under 30 Megawatt prize.
Yeah, that's the ISM 30 under 30. And that was awarded just a couple of months ago. Well, actually, as we record this, we're in the end of May. So that was just a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it, at the ISM conference?
Correct. That was last week in Nashville.
Yeah.
And it was really a very, very big honor when I received that phone call. I was very humbled that I got selected to not only be part of the winning panel, but also be the Megawatt winner, and the first one from EMEA. So that made me extremely proud.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
There's a couple of questions I had just to jump off the project. One was, you talked about kind of streamlining what is a 9 to 12 month process and bringing that down to, I think you said 4 months. And that's one of the struggles and challenges I think as a procurement profession we often have, is that our business is looking to us to move faster. And sometimes we're encumbered by all these processes, which mean that we're not able to move fast enough, for our business. I wonder if you could share perhaps a couple of ways that you were able to take time out of the process.
Yeah, so I think I can truly point out the 9 success factors, which I think all contributed to this success by completing this project in less than 4 months. And absolutely, it was a very, very time-intense process and timeline which we had to engage and follow. So my nine success factors which contributed, firstly, being patient, trust in yourself, because as a leader, you need to make the team believe what you believe, and you cannot just climb up the mountain just within a day. So it's really patience and being thoughtful throughout. Secondly is surround yourself with positive people. Ignore the no-sayers. Many said, Charlotte, how can you do that in less than 4 months? That will never be possible. Or, not everybody.
I'm sorry, Sha, I just wanted to jump in. And did you believe at the beginning that this was a project you could do in 3 or 4 months? It wasn't that you just happened to be able to do it in 3 or 4 months. You set yourself that target at the very beginning.
Well, especially I've never been involved in finding an energy service provider before. It was a completely new field, and this timeline has never been achieved before for such a project and for this process. So I thought, I had to swallow and thought, okay, let's go for it. Let's do it and start on it right away. And that's why my enthusiasm kind of just penetrated through the team. I had the team very much engaged, and that's why we kept on focusing to achieve the target. Yeah. And also to not give up. It's okay that maybe sometimes during that process, during this week, something didn't turn out as we expected, or things may have failed. But we wanted to always never give up and stay on the path and always look at our timeline. And also it's important to stay authentic in the team. Yeah. It's important to be realistic, authentic, and that's how you get the trust from the team. Also, another important factor is open communication. I told the team right from the beginning to any difficulty, any challenge they have, communicate it to me straight away. Don't wait a week for our next project meeting. Yeah. Tell me right away, and we can solve it immediately, rather than just waiting for certain situations to unfold by themselves. Also, very important is just to always work hard. I know everyone has also the social life and the family and the job, and that's all what we have to try and manage, this work-life balance. But in order to achieve this timeline, we all worked hard together as a team. And as a leader, especially, having never been in this field before, it was very important to feed off each other.
Right.
And learn from the team. At the end, you as the leader, you can guide and you keep an eye on the overall time frame. But to get the work done, you require everyone's help. And that leads me really to the team. Self-educate yourself, so learn from the team.
Yeah.
And I think we were successful through that passion which we shared and that proactiveness.
How did the suppliers react to this time frame as well? Given that their responsiveness is obviously a critical part of being able to achieve what you did.
Absolutely. And you can imagine by firstly wanting to create that enthusiasm within the global suppliers and on a virtual level, that was really something very unique. And not many do that before you start a project to get the whole global supplier community involved and engaged. And that was our hope, to also make the suppliers speak to each other and maybe inform some new suppliers to reach out to us who we have maybe missed. So they were very well surprised, but in another way, we received a lot of positive feedback for this open communication right from the beginning.
Yeah. I think we often lose sight of how important transparency is. And as a profession, I think it's something we struggle with because, at least I know from my experience, in the automotive days, and you may have had the same experience within automotive, when there's small margins and it's a lot of leverage-based negotiations, you're taught that data is so powerful and information is powerful, and therefore it's something not to be given up, not to be shared. Whereas my experience has shown me since then that I really like to be open. I'd rather be open and try and address solutions, try and build solutions, than try and keep all the information close to my chest. And I think that's really an evolution for us in our thinking.
Absolutely. And 10 years ago, when I started in automotive, we would have never imagined to be sharing that kind of information prior to our suppliers, or even engaging all of the suppliers in one phone call together. And then, and they knowing of each other, who we invited.
Yeah.
So that transparency also contributed to that trust factor. And that again contributed to them and their willingness to join this tendering process.
Yeah.
So more than 50% of these suppliers took part in that tendering afterwards, which is just a wonderful outcome.
Yeah. Did you find that some of them would then partner? So when they recognized who was also in that process, they could actually build stronger proposals and solutions by coming together as opposed to competing against one another?
Exactly, and that's what we wanted to achieve, because our aim was to find one global energy service provider. So we only wanted to have one contact, and it was really up to them and their innovative approach, how they would partner up and with who, and if they were even going to. So that showed us that they also thought ahead, which we find very positive.
Mm-hmm. Is that deal now implemented? And the reason I ask is because I'm interested to know, kind of now it's implemented, if it's achieving the value that you hope that it would do when you put it together.
Absolutely. So we've had the implementation from January this year, and we are truly pleased about the outcome.
Great. Well, congratulations again. I think it's a great example of kind of thinking differently, challenging the status quo, and kind of not necessarily thinking within the typical boundaries that we create for ourselves. And this kind of approach can be applied not just to energy, but to really any project. It's just, again, all about thinking a little bit differently, I think.
Absolutely. And I think especially nowadays, in our modern time, we need to be more flexible. We need to look ahead. And if it's on the supplier side or on whoever side, you need to show each other that you are thinking towards the future, that you have an innovative approach.
Now, I want to just segue a little bit to talk about public speaking, because I know that, at least I assume, I did some, as I was researching before the interview, you've talked a lot about public speaking, and, you have a website about your public speaking. I wondered, why is that such a passion for you?
Well, for me, public speaking is like my own little drug.
Right.
It motivates me when I'm on stage. I forget about all my surroundings, and I just let myself free. Everybody has a way to relax themselves and it's a way that truly makes them happy. And I think in our community nowadays, it's so difficult to find what makes you happy.
Right.
If I speak to friends, my colleagues, many are unhappy in their private life, many are unhappy in their work life. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a matter of trying to engage with yourself. What passion do you have? But also, if there is a challenge you're facing at the moment, go and do something about it. Mm-hmm. Don't just sit around and complain about it. It's a matter of taking responsibility, taking it into your hand. And I've always followed this public speaking for the past 10 years, because I knew it truly had a very positive impact on me.
It's funny that you talk about it being not funny, but I guess to me, like so many people, I probably feel the opposite. That public speaking is something that to be fearful of, and that you feel, rather than kind of in your zone and in a happy place, it's more you feel uncomfortable and vulnerable. And that's certainly how I feel. It's one of those things that I think with practice, I become more confident. I think every time I stand up and talk, I become more confident. It's a lot easier to do things behind a microphone, like this podcast, for me, than it is to stand in front of a room. But I'm curious, like for somebody like me, how would you coach me to be more comfortable on stage? Because I think it's something that will probably resonate with a lot of the listeners too.
Yeah, well, it's quite funny that even after 10 years of public speaking, every time, a few minutes before I go on stage, I just think to myself, oh my goodness, why did I sign up for this again?
That doesn't make me feel as bad then.
Just to make you feel better, it happens to me every single time. But then once I'm on stage, I forget, and it's just the lovely feeling of adrenaline which kicks in. Mm-hmm. But something which, an advice I could offer for you, it's something which I learned at my boarding school. It's kind of focusing your mind and trying to just. I have a funny habit every single time I before I do my public speaking, I do 10 seconds, 15 seconds just of qigong, which is some sort of small meditation. Mm-hmm. And within a few seconds, it completely relaxes my mind and focuses on what I want to say. Frees up all of my thoughts, which are just in my head, and I can truly just look forward to my performance on stage.
Now, is it possible to over prepare? Because I think that's what I do sometimes, is to kind of make up for that that vulnerability. I'll script something, I'll try and remember how I've scripted it, and I'll try and remember how the flow is, and I think that takes something away then from actually being natural and being yourself on stage. Like, I've just done too much prep, but I probably feel too vulnerable to go in there without having done that, and I think that's part of my learning journey.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's something I've done in the past, where I over-prepared. I even had my speech all written out, and it just became a bit unauthentic on stage. Until now, when I know that this is my structure, I have it in my head, and then you just let it flow. And it's important to have a skeleton when you're up there, but at the end, let your creativity really out. And when your mind gets less stressed on stage, that's when the creativity really kicks in. Having that backbone, of course, that's very important.
Yeah, that's really helpful, because I think by scripting or trying to have too many points I want to cover, then if you miss one thing or miss your mark, then it throws everything else off, because you have this kind of in your mind, you're going to talk about this, and you're going to talk about this, and you're going to talk about this, and if you miss one of them, it's like I feel that's what throws me off. So that's kind of great advice for me to take on board, I think, the next time that I speak.
Absolutely. And then when you get thrown off while speaking, you think in your head that you missed that one word,
right.
what you wanted to say.
Yep.
So I've been through that. I've been through that, and of course, for me, I've never had really a public speaking training or big
right.
education in that field. But for me, as such, it really comes out of my heart, and it's just sharing my passion and enthusiasm with others who would like to learn. And
feeling, I think being authentic is kind of so important that it's easy to lose in the over preparation. Whereas just, if you're kind of confident you know what you're talking about, you should be confident enough to be able to talk on stage rather than trying to talk yourself out of not knowing what you're talking about. That's what I find. I start having the issue where you think, do I really know this topic well enough? Am I really good? Do I know enough that I can stand in front of an audience to talk about this? And that's when you start questioning yourself, I think.
Yeah, and I've also been through that. Trust me, I've also been through that phase when I just thought, am I ready enough? But it's just a matter of giving it a try and at least speak about what you know. Yeah. And while you're on stage, you'll be so surprised how much you actually know, how much your mind takes in by reading articles, journals, and then all these examples just come back in your mind when you are talking about it. Yeah. So in the past, back in school, I was also part of the debating team at a university. I was also president of the debating club there. So that already gave me that whole feeling of just being on stage and being able to speak in a smooth manner and speak without too many pauses.
Mm-hmm. And with confidence. And then with that
knowledge and with confidence. Yeah. Yes. But of course, it just doesn't happen overnight. Yeah. It takes practice.
So you set up TEDx Lugano. I'm fascinated that you kind of took that passion for public speaking into setting up an event itself. I wondered, what was the motivation behind doing that? Well,
it was... I think the motivation truly grew out of my passion in technology, in that specific field of the unknown. Right now everyone is still reading up every day on all of our new innovations and all of these developments which are currently happening. If it's on a startup level, if it's in established processes, and all of that change. Yeah. And I think it's really up to everyone individually to deal with that change in particular. So that TEDx Lugano was a way to create awareness of the professions of the future, and that certain professions, they may die out, but that then will give us opportunity for new ones and for other professions which will then come up. So I think the future of the professions, it will truly rely on soft skills and that creativity aspect, because at the end of the day, that's something you cannot replace. A robot will not see if an elderly person is crying,
right,
or if someone is upset. Yeah. A robot will only have it either black and white. There are yes and no routes, and there are certain expressions they can use. But that feeling sense, that's something which will sustain in us humans.
So as you reflect on that in terms of procurement specifically, and then I think in the development of your own career as well, are there things that you're doing to prepare yourself, do you feel, for a future of, where the professions that exist look very differently and where the types of work that we do look very different?
Well, of course, continuous learning and adapting to new technologies is very important. And and also having moved from within different industries, different companies, I have also been faced with or confronted with new technology. So I had to learn all sorts of different ERP systems, from Salesforce to Microsoft Dynamics, SAP, and trying to engage to its fullest extent to all of the different service provider softwares which we have, especially in procurement. My first employer had 55 different procurement softwares and programs in place. So that then, now moving to Johnson Johnson, there are less programs, but it's just a lot more intense. And they're approaching it more from a different angle, but also looking to the future of supply chain, looking at autonomous supply chain. And we've also had a change recently in our company. But the whole continuous learning aspect is truly vital, and it will change in the next 20 years. So I think it's just important to constantly want to learn, and automatically you engage with people, with topics, and maybe get the opportunity to have an impact in people's lives, in the company, create global impact. And also, it's important to be an early adopter, recognize the trends, and be open towards new technologies, which may play an important role in the future.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because we don't necessarily know what's going to happen. We couldn't look at a crystal ball and say, in 20 years, these are going to be the careers that exist, and this is what's going to happen to procurement, and this is what the skill set's going to be. And it's very hard to really draw a direct line from where we are today to where we may be then. But it's about being curious on that journey and taking every opportunity.
Recognizing patterns and trends.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely.
And you may invest in things that go nowhere, but you still learn along the way. So, Charlotte, I know it's about time to wrap up the conversation. I had kind of one final question, and that's it's really around time management, to be honest with you. So we talked a lot about the things that you're involved in and engaged in, but there's a lot of things that we didn't talk about, your charity work, your sports, your traveling, just to name 3 of them. How do you fit it all in? Is there a way? Does it come down to structure within your life that enables you to kind of have a time for everything? I'm just curious, because for most folks, myself certainly included, you kind of get overwhelmed at the thought of it. While excited by the opportunity of everything you do, you think, I wouldn't even know how to fit, a couple of those things into my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it truly comes down to 4 main daily habits, which I have every single morning. And it doesn't matter how late I go to bed, I always wake up early.
Yeah.
I try, I can have a sleep in once in a while if I plan it, even, but I wake up early no matter what. Then I know I can have a whole full day, and I can make the most out of each day. Yeah. And I have to, in order for me to be happy, I need to have a fulfilled day. That just relaxes me mentally as well. Mm-hmm. And I have a to-do list every morning of my accomplishments, which I would like to achieve, but also maybe people I need to reach out to. I reflect upon the day, and in the evening, then also think, okay, have I managed to complete it all, or what successes have I had today? And that kind of just keeps your mind always positive. Yeah. Thirdly, also every morning before getting ready, I read an inspirational quote. Mm-hmm. I got that habit from my boarding school when I was young. We always had morning assembly when our headmaster gave a morning message to all of us, and they set the frame for the day. So that's sort of focusing my mind on a certain quote. That sort of small meditation that also sets me up for the day. Mm-hmm. And then fourthly, it's super important to always listen to your body. If you need rest, your body will tell you, and there's no point just overworking yourself, having one night shift after the other, and then ending up with a burnout, because that's really not being responsible. It doesn't matter how hard you work, and it's always important to stay focused, but always listen to your body. That could be my advice for everybody.
So I have to ask you then, what time is early for you? What time's your alarm clock set for in the morning?
6 a.m. 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 6 a. Well, I have my alarm for 6 or 6:30, but automatically I get up always before.
Right.
And then we have a morning family habit. We wish each other good morning every morning, because my family is also spread out all over. My brother lives in London, my parents in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, so we all are in different time zones. Anyhow.
Well, Charlotte, I want to thank you again for joining me today and for sharing some of your experiences and thoughts, perspectives, and habits as well there at the end. I think there's a lot to take away from the conversation, a lot for anyone listening to learn from. Just one final question, and that is, if listeners would like to connect with you or find out a little bit more, where should they find you?
Absolutely. Well, I have my website, which is www.charlottedebrabandt.com, where you can send me a postal note or an email note. Yeah. I check my emails on a very regular basis and look forward in hearing from you. I'm more than happy to ask and to answer any questions.
Perfect. What I'll do, Charlotte, is I will link up to your website on our show notes for today's episode. That will be at artofprocurement.com/Charlotte. That's artofprocurement/Charlotte. One last time, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Philip, for having me. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, you too. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Art of Procurement. To find an archive of all past episodes, you can go to artofprocurement.com/episodes. And to ensure you never miss another show, go to artofprocurement.com/subscribe.